To be honest, I had no idea this game got released until about a month ago, but apparently it released a whole year ago. I think the reason for that is that it's only downloadable off of Apple Arcade, which the problem with that is that it's a monthly subscription. I was only able to play it because you get a free month for Apple Arcade, but that's enough of that. Let's talk about the actual gameplay itself. Sonic Dream Team kind of drifts away from the boost formula. While it does have a boost, it's not as fast as it was in other boost games like Unleashed. So it kind of makes the game more like a platformer instead of a, quote, boost to win. This game has really easy controls, which makes sense because it's a mobile game, but sometimes it can make the game feel too easy, but it usually doesn't make it that bad. You can play with a controller, which does make this game feel better to play, but that makes it feel even more easy. It almost gives a Sonic Lost World feeling, which it's not really that similar, but it kind of gives the same vibe. Like the adventure games, there are multiple different character playstyles. Well, they aren't really different playstyles, but they're like different abilities. They are Sonic, Amy, Tails, Cream, Rouge, and Knuckles playable in the game. And there's one more, but we'll get into that later. Sonic and Amy have the ring dash as well as the air dash. Tails and Cream can fly. Knuckles and Rouge can glide and climb on very specific walls. Sonic and Amy's gameplay is definitely the peak of this game. It's pretty fast and focuses mostly on platforming. How Sonic controls isn't exactly how everyone wants, how they usually want it tight, fast, responsive. It has more of a floaty feel, but it kind of works for this game since it's a mobile game. Earlier I compared this game to the adventure games, but it doesn't really feel like the adventure games. It feels like its own game, which I guess makes sense. There's an alright balance of speed and platforming with Sonic and Amy. Now to talk about the flying characters, Tails and Cream. They can fly, but it's for very short periods, and that's why they added these little yellow things that can fill up the bar again. The problem with these flying characters is that flying is so slow. You're heavily discouraged to fly, especially when you're on a time limit. Also, these levels are just boring. They use the same flying gimmick every single time. If we're comparing this game to another game where Tails can roam freely without a mech, in Sonic Adventure 1, he could always take a bunch of shortcuts to skip things. But in this game, there's no shortcuts, which kind of gets rid of the whole point of the character. I know you can do skips with Tails, but they're like forcing you to do it. It's almost required. I know Tails shouldn't be a character that just flies over the whole level, but it just doesn't make sense to make him so slow when flying, when he's usually seen as fast when flying, around Sonic speed when flying. Now let's switch over to Knuckles and Rouge. Unlike the speed and flying gameplay, these two are more vertical experience, but it doesn't really work that well. Again, like Tails and Cream, you're heavily discouraged to glide. It makes you a lot slower, and also you drop like a brick. It just kind of shows how their gameplay doesn't belong in a regular level, and they should only be included in treasure hunting stages. There are technically treasure hunting stages, but they don't work how like they used to in the adventure games. And also, you can use any other character and you could usually get away with it. Because you can only climb on the red walls, there's not a lot of exploring to do in these treasure hunting levels. And also, it tells you exactly where to get the dream shards anyway. Enough about all the individual characters. Let's get on to the overall level design, because that can either make or break a Sonic game. The flow of these levels are actually pretty good. As I've said before, that's only for Sonic and Amy for the most part. A new thing this time for Sega is that these levels are actually really unique. They captured the whole dream aspect of it pretty well. Even when boosting, there's a little dream filter, I guess you could say. But the main problem with this game is the progression. You progress by getting these dream orbs, and when you get enough of them, you unlock another level. The problem with this is it's basically just replaying the same level over and over again until you get the amount of dream orbs you need for the next level. There is 12 levels in this game that aren't bosses, and there's 4 levels that are bosses, which is not a lot of levels. But the reason this game takes so long is because you have to play the same stage over and over again. It took me almost a month to beat this game, just because sometimes I didn't want to play the game, because I just didn't want to play the same level 4 times just to unlock the next one, just to play that level 4 times again. Now, earlier I said there was 4 bosses, so let's talk about those. These bosses are very mediocre. They're not the worst bosses I've ever fought, but they're very basic. For one, they have their health bar showed up, so you already know how much hits you have to get, which doesn't break the experience, but it doesn't make it any better, really. There's about one boss per playstyle. The bosses just aren't very memorable. After you beat them once, you'll probably forget what you just did. Even the final boss was nothing to write home about. The final boss is like mini compressed versions of each character's playstyle of level. You actually don't end up like hitting him. The cutscene does that.
The nightmare's over, Eggman!
That was actually impressively so much worse than I remembered. Well, I guess that's about everything I wanted to talk to you guys about, so I guess I'll just end the video here. Oh yeah, I can't lie, I haven't played many of his levels. I've actually only played the tutorial level, so I'm not the greatest reviewer on this. But from what I know from the tutorial level, he's not very fun to play. Shadow has Chaos Control and Chaos Shift. This playstyle isn't a bad idea, but in Sonic Dream Team it just doesn't work. The controls aren't advanced enough for this stuff to work. This is most definitely a skill issue, but I found myself dying a lot because of how unnatural the Chaos Shift feels and how used to I am just with Sonic's air dash. This playstyle of Shadow is something I've never seen before, and it seems like they were testing something, but it doesn't really work very well. Also, he's not even part of the story, he's just like a side quest character. Also, before I end the video, I have no idea what the story is about. I wasn't really paying attention, I was just there for the gameplay. And I don't plan to play any more of this game because I literally can't. I canceled the subscription and now I can't play the game anymore. And I don't want to pay for Apple Arcade. If you still have your free month of Apple Arcade, you should try this game. If not, then don't bother.